But first of all, I would like to thank Carol Robinson White for asking me to do this. I saw Apple John's picture there at the Rutherford County Heritage Society hanging on the wall. And we got to talk, and I said, you know, I had done some research on him. And I thank all of you all for being here and everything, but there are several questions I want to ask before I actually get started. And like you said, I did get nervous. Every time I turned that Facebook on, I'm not a technology person except my son is here. He said, I know everything about genealogy. Nothing else for the computer except I can look up ancestry and family heritage and stuff like that. And everything. So I want to pose a question, several questions. First thing is, I want to know, is anybody in here a Ghostbuster? Any hands? A Ghostbuster? Well, I thought I would ask that question, pose that question, because I'm talking about Apple John, and he's been deceased for about 63 years. So I thought maybe I may have to call on somebody, because he may have seen this email that I've been seeing, and knowing I'm talking about him and everything. So I just want to make sure if I had somebody here to protect me, just in case you hear some noise in here or whatever. So another thing I wanted to ask, how many people in here that actually know Apple John? I mean, that actually know Apple John? I have two. And Deborah, would you stand up? Would you stand up, Deborah? Miss, you, John, yeah. This lady right here, we met, and I'm probably telling part of my story, but we met several years ago. I had an art display up, and I had Apple John's book on the table, and she said, that is my cousin, and everything. So when they asked me to do this, I still had her number. I said, I hope she hadn't changed it. So I gave her a call. And I really appreciate her showing up tonight. And she was telling me about her great-great-grandfather, somebody. That's how she's tied to Apple John, okay? How many of y'all have actually heard of him before this invitation? Oh, okay. So that means that a lot of y'all is my age plus, because I think, you know, I was 14, I think, when he passed, and everything. So I wanted to see that. So, you know, how many of you all actually know his real name? We have two people. Yeah, I even polled the African American Heritage Society, and I think I found one or two that actually knew his name. And if y'all ever done genealogy, you'll find out that how spellings interchange and everything, or whatever. So with that being said, I'm gonna get into the PowerPoint so I can make sure I stay on time. And as you see this picture here, I painted that of him back in 2013. After I'd done the research, I painted a picture of him. And that's when I actually started working on researching him. I started back in 2011 or 12, started doing research on the Apple John. So you can go ahead and that's the title of the book and everything. And from there you can go to the next slide. I'm gonna give you a little background information, how this came about. And one thing, how many of you all in here have done your family genealogy and documented your history? Wow, that's great. That is good. Because I feel like it's so important for us to do this, to document our family history. And I started back in around about 2002, diving into my family, and I researched on 4 different sides of my family and try to document it so that I can leave that to the young people. And what it does is it affords you the opportunity to discover, you know, where you came from, and it also helps you to identify where you are today. It's very important that we leave this to our younger generation and everything, because, you know, so that when the family history, if you do not record that, when the family dies, so does that the information about the family dies. And I think it's very important that the young people know about their history and which they came from, and they know, so that they would know that whose shoulders they are standing on. and everything, because a lot of them don't know that. And I'm going to be honest, I did not get interested in genealogy until back in 2000, and I think it was 2001 is when I first got into it and started researching this guy named Luke Murphy. I found a painting that he had done at my great aunt's house, and I wanted to know who he was. So that's what really got me into it. And if you're into this, and I don't know if any of y'all have found this, the one thing I say, I want people to be prepared to know that once you start doing research, you're going to find some family secrets that you don't know about. And I tell, sometimes us older generation, we tend to forget. We have this young generation, but nothing is going on now, I guarantee you, that didn't happen way back then, okay? So, that's one thing I want you all to know that. But how I really got into Appian was, we started back in 2012, through Vanderbilt, the Wisdom of the Elders. And that program was and now it's called the African American Voices of the Past and Present. Once they were there for about 4 years, and then the Murfreesboro Parks and Recs decided they want to keep that. And so with that being said, what I do, I work with them to document their history, show them how to research and everything when you get up in age. And a lot of them, like myself, don't know a lot about computers and stuff like that, so I sort of have to work with them with that and work with them with being patient as about doing the research, because it takes a lot of patience in doing this, and you'll find a lot of things on how to do this. I say I'm self-taught, but I think his name is Lamb. Is it Barry that has several books? So when I started doing that, going up to the Historical Society, up at the historical part of the library, he was always there. He's got several books here that he wrote. And John at the archives. Those two people really helped me to know and to what to look at as far as doing research. And I look at Louis Gates all the time. Of course, now he's having rerun. So on Tuesday night, I look at him, watch that program, and another one that comes on, Who Do You Think You Are? Lost Long Relative and stuff. All of those programs, they help me to, when going in and doing all this research. And another thing that I have found out too, when you go in and do a lot of this stuff, names changes. And I'm going to mention how many times I found the spelling, so I really don't know what the correct spelling is of his last name and anything. So we can go to the next frame. Okay, and the reason why is this, why Appian? When I was saying that we was doing this, and during the time of the planning period, when we was talking about what we're going to do, it was 3 components of that program. One was genealogy. Other ones that we had to paint a picture of some kind of life experience and everything. Then another was the cemeteries and churches, because if you are into research, those things really helps you to, if you're really into research and stuff, a cemetery can tell you a whole lot. I do a lot of that, go into cemeteries, the African American Heritage Society, a lot of them are here. We go in and we document the African American cemeteries. And the reason why I'm saying the African American cemeteries is because we looked in a lot of the books, a lot of our cemeteries are not documented. So we go in and try to document those and put them in a database. And you'll be surprised, some people that's no longer here, they do call and ask us sometimes, do we know where so-and-so is buried? So, and everything, so we do that. And while we were doing this, the name came up about Appian, and it brought me into remembrance. I remember as a child, when I said I was, it was in the late 50s. I was born in 1946. So it was in the late 50s. And everything. He used to walk up and down the street. I had sort of forgotten about it, but it brought into remembrance and everything. When we were having our meeting, and Dr. Hodges, she was one of the ones was doing the art part, and she said, yeah, like this man called Appian, nobody know who he is. And that made me think, I remember it as a child, somebody talking about Appian, but I really didn't know who Appian was. And so that's how that got started with him. And everything, as you see, we're talking about the Wisdom of the Elders. I've already mentioned that about that program and everything, the 3 areas that we work with and everything. So with Appian, when I decided that I wanted to do Applejohn. So what I decided, the next thing is the questions. Okay, when I said, okay, I want to do Applejohn, and I was so excited, and my curiosity sort of stepped in, you know, about this man called Applejohn. So there was several questions I feel like I needed to know. You know, that was, where did he come from? What was his real name? Why and how he got the name Applejohn? And who was his family? So I said, okay. Then I was so excited about doing that. So then when I got in, when I left, you know, I said, man, the research is on. So I started doing that. But come to find out, I didn't know nothing but Applejohn. And I said, man, but I remember during the conversation, we were talking about, Barbara said, well, Shackley, they got a photograph of him up there, hanging up there. I said, that's my start. I said, I'm going to go and see, I think her name was Gloria Shackley, to see, you know, that picture. But however, when I got there, she had moved the picture down in the basement. So I never did see the picture that she had. And I called her the other day, and she said somebody had brought her a copy. And I asked her if she could send it to me, but I never got it. And I don't know if one of these is one of the ones that was there or not. I don't know if some of you been up there, you may recognize it, but she said she had it there. Her father took that picture years ago. And as you see, he was born in 1869, and he died in 1961. Of course, when you get into that genealogy stuff, the age varies from one year to the other, so I don't really know what his age was. And actually, all actuality, what his real name was. So anyway, I started with Miss Shackley to see, with Gloria to see. And so I asked Gloria, I said, you know, what is his name? Now, the person that did the PowerPoint, a couple of, my fault because I should have reviewed it. That picture on there is the one I'm thinking that that right there came out of Charles Arnett's book. But the next one has the one, the next picture, it has that picture of the one that was, that I'll be talking about, that was at the cafe. But anyway, I talked to Gloria, and I said, Gloria, do you know his last name? I said, I want to find out who this Applejohn is. She said, well, I am not for sure, but I think it started with an S. It may have been something like Sanford or whatever, but I really don't know. But she said, I tell you what, I want you to call former Representative John Hood. She said, because he had talked about, he remembered him when he was coming up, when he was a child, and everything. And another thing she told me, she said, yeah, and I do know his father was white. She said, because some of his relatives have been in here and saw the picture and said that he was my relative, and everything. That's it was probably part of her family that saw that and said, you know, part of my family. She said, you know, they tell me that he recognized him and honored him as being his son. Even though he had a family of his own, he would ride him around on the tractor out there where they were raised up and everything or whatever, so he never denied him. Now, he was born in, I think around, his father was born around 1827, and then Applejohn's mom, her name was Harriet. She came off of the plantation out there, the Murray plantation and everything, and she was, I think she was born in right in the 1850 something. Like I said, the age varied from the census and everything. So anyway, Mr. Hood, he was telling me about how he would walk up and down the street and everything, and he said his name was Summers, like summer with the S. And then as you see with the one that Charles Arnett had, he has Summer, A-R, S-U-M-M-A-R. And that's what I'm saying, names interchanged, or whatever. And so that's what he said his name was. So anyway, after I got through talking to John Hood, he was talking about how he used to walk him down the street with the sticks. People said they remember him. He would have those sticks in his hands walking up and down the street with him on Maple Street or whatever. And also, I sketched a picture of him with the sticks. It's on that over there, and it's on that PowerPoint somewhere, so it may not be in order. That he used to walk with down the street and used to hit the pavement and all that kind of stuff, and all. So he referred me to the City Cafe, and that's the one that's up at the City Cafe. The last time I was there, it was still there. I don't know if anybody's seen that picture hanging up there of Apple John. So they have that picture of him hanging up there in the cafe there, and the other one. Let's go. I think let's go back and see if the one. Okay, that's the one that was at in Arnett's book, and then the other one is at the City Cafe. Yeah. Okay, and yeah, that's the one I have here, and I found that picture of the one that Arnett did. Have any of y'all seen the mink slide to Main Street? That picture was in there, and that's when I said I saw the name somewhere. So I went on the computer and I kept checking all those names, the spellings in. So I was getting confused. I said, now what is really his name? You know, people call him different. Someone was S-U-M-N-E-R, S-U-M-M-E-R-S, S-U-M-M-A-R. So I said, you know, I wrote a letter. I didn't know whether they were going to respond. I sent a letter to the Tennessee Archives down in Nashville, Vice Statistic, and I told them, I said, you know, I'm doing research on this man named Applejohn, and I put down his name, a possibility of his name. So, and his death certificate. So they sent it back to me, and they had S-U-M-L-E-R as his last name. Okay, so that's the name I went with, but I found all of those different spellings in the archives. Okay, so Applejohn's name, as you see there, those are the different spellings of his name. But according to, like I said, his death certificate, he was John Sumner was born to Harriet Murray around 1889. And a neighboring slave owner by the name of Reuben, they called him Greenback, but his middle name was Christian Farrell, and he died in 1899, and everything. But Deborah said she was telling me why they called him Greenback, and I think in one of the articles in the paper they had Reuben Greenback and everything, but when I found him, it said Christian was his middle name, and he's buried in the cemetery out there in the Bradeville community. That's where he was born, right on. They said the Rutherford County and Cannon County line, out in there. Bradeville, yeah, out in Bradeville community, and so what? Dawn's Chapel. There was Dawn's Chapel. There was Sumner's Gap. There was, I think there was some kind of other gap where Burke's Hollow. Burke's Hollow is several of those little communities right in there together. And also when I looked at that, and I wondered, you know, about Applejohn, and you know, it lists his siblings. He took, like I said, he took his stepfather's name. His name was Monroe. He married Harriet in 1881. And like I said, Applejohn was born in 1869. So, and later on, she married a guy by the name of Samuel. His name was Rucker. I tried to find some of his relatives. I called some of the Ruckers or whatever to see if he was related to them, but I could not find his African-American side of the family. Is anybody here related to him? Anybody in here? I was just curious. I was hoping somebody saw it. Maybe they would show up, because I've been trying to locate some people, but I don't know. But I do know that his siblings, he had, one was named Joe, William, Mary, B, Feder, Lizzie, and Millie. And Millie was also called Amy. And everything, but they moved to up north, and everything. I found where they were living there, and also I found where his mother Harriet later on, after I did the book, I went back and I kept doing some research. She died in 1945 in Indianapolis, Indiana, with some of Applejohn's half siblings. Okay, he was the only one that I found in some. The rest of them was, they went in Rutgers, or whatever, which was his half siblings. Okay, Applejohn, now this right here, you can't see the date on that. This was in 1920. He was still dressing the same way in 1920 that he was in 1960. He was still wearing the clothes and stuff like that. And matter of fact, when John Hood and my brother brought me to remembrance, he said, Mary, you know, you remember when we used to go to Holloway High School back in the 50s? We had to go pick up the people. I lived out in Walter Hill. And back then, Maple Street came straight into Murfreesboro Maple Street. That memorial wasn't there then. So we used to have to go down Maple Street. And my brother said, don't you remember that old guy with the beard and stuff? He used to be walking, and we used to see him on the bus and everything. And that's where everybody that I talked to, that's how they described him. Just like this, I got this from Pauline a lot, what is that? Pauline. But anyway, and she had passed, but she lived in that community there in Brandon Pike, and she had a scrapbook of him. And that's where I got a lot of the picture, newspaper articles, and all because of the fact she had that. She said she grew up in that community with him. So he married a lady named Betty Taylor, and she married him. John married her in 1897, and they had 6 children. Okay, and like I said, and they also, I found where his wife and one of his daughters passed, and they were buried out here in the Benevolent Cemetery. I don't know if you all know where the Benevolent Cemetery, the African American Cemetery is, when you go to the Pluck Ed Miller viaduct there, and if you look over to your right, and you'll see the cemetery over there. That's where, off of Church Street, that's where his wife and one of his children was buried. The rest of them, I found where they went. Detroit, one of his sons died. He was in Detroit, Michigan. They just sort of left him or whatever. So when she died, after his wife died, for some reason or another, and let me go back. They owned some land out there. They had 111 acres out there. And I said, you know, that's something. He's homeless, but then back in the day, they had 111 acres. I talked to Greg Tuck about it, and I went and found these records where they owned the land. But he's thinking it came through her father or whatever. But anyway, I found where they had sold it to some of the Gunn family. And anybody know about the Gunn family? Who can tell me something? Julie Garland. That was some of her people. And he sold some of the land to him. It was a couple of the Guns that they sold it to. And then they sold it back to the Taylor. Now, I don't know if that went back to her family or not, if the Taylor, because she was a Taylor, his wife was. So I don't know if that was part of the family that bought that land back. But anyway, that was sort of puzzling to me, and it was out there, of course, it was out there in District 23, how he became homeless. So, in my book, when you see the little research that I've done, somewhere out there in that community, that's where the truth lies. Whether we ever find out what happened, we don't know. Except I know that she passed and everything. And so I feel like maybe, just maybe after she passed or something, maybe, something happened and everything, and he decided to leave. But the reason why he got his name, did anybody know how he got his name? Applejohn. Okay, out there in the country, he had an apple orchard, okay? So he tried to make a living selling apples. He would go to the courthouse. That's why people would see him going up and down up there on the public square with apples. He was peddling, trying to sell apples. Well, he found out, well, shoot, I can't make a living off of this. And it wasn't making a profit. So he got upset about it, so he decided to give it up and stop working. But that, you know how people tease people, because he got really angry about it, and he said he didn't want another apple, he didn't want to hear that word or whatever, so people started calling him an Apple John. So over the years, with that being Apple John, people forgot his real name, his full name. John Sumner, whatever his last name was, people forgot that. All they knew was Apple John, except one of our members. His name is former members. He was the vice president of the African American Hair Society when we started doing this. His name was Shannon Blackman. Shannon said, Mary, I remember him. I worked at a Lane store on Church Street. I don't know anything about that. Some of y'all may know. He said there was a Lane store. I worked there. He said Apple John used to come in there all the time and everything. And he always had this long beard. In the summertime, wintertime, if you read the article, all year long, all year round, he would wear layers of clothes, have this beard, and this hat, and everything. And Shannon had me laughing. He said, yeah, he used to come into to Lane's store, and he used to buy a Coke and some vanilla flavoring. And I said, what did he do that? He said he put the vanilla flavoring into the Coke because he used to drink. He just drank alcohol, and he said that would give him a kick. And I found that so he liked drinking that and everything, and that's also in the article that I found. And this one in there said he boasts about being 100, but his age ranged from anywhere from 84 to 91. See, that's another thing you find out. Everyone who's taking the census, a lot of times the age varied, the spelling, and all of that interchange. So I'm calling him John Sumner because that's what was on his death certificate. And it said that he could read, but his wife could not read and everything. So with that being said, he became homeless and he gave it up. And if you see the newspaper article, I have it in the book, where he talked about, you know, how he had became I said he was a Christian. I just put in my own words because he used to quote Bible scripture and all that kind of stuff or whatever. I think he had sort of changed his way of life, even though he was putting that vanilla flavor in that Coke, trying to get a kick. And he had been an alcoholic once upon a time. If y'all ever get to see that article and read about it, because he did say that he used to drink all the time, I guess, when he just gave up on life, carefree, and Hood said he used to live in the basement of a Mr. Brown there on the corner of Loki and Spring. So that's the reason why you would see him walking up through towards on Maple Street all the time or whatever, because he lived in the basement after he left that community there. So he started living in somebody's basement, and then he moved over where Mr. Johnson, Pledge Johnson lived on Loki. And Mr. Pledge Johnson had an old shack back there, and he stayed in that shack or whatever. My thing is, I just wish I knew the story. I know how he got his name. I've learned a little bit about his family, his siblings, and his children. I would really love to know why, having most things that we all work for, have land, a family, and all of that in the business, but he became homeless. So that goes to show you, you know, until we walk into somebody else's footsteps. Everybody in here has a story. We don't know what's behind that, but I would really love to know whatever, but I guess that's something I probably never will. But anyway, I thought that was very interesting, okay? And like I said, his whole name was forgotten and only became known as Apple John because of the fact, and they called him that until he died. And one of the pictures on there is where they took him when he lived there on Loki. After Mr. Johnson passed, they took him and put him in a nursing home because of the way he was and everything. They put him in a nursing home. They shaved him. They cleaned him up. He looked totally different. And you could sort of see that white descent more And he was listed. I don't know if y'all look at genealogy. When you look at that, a lot of times him and all of his siblings were listed as being mulatto and everything. And if that picture, if it's on there, you make it the last one. That's him. That's how he looked after they cleaned him up and all that kind of stuff or whatever. The thing about it, when they took him from that environment, he didn't really live very long. They took him in 1960. He died August of 1961. But and I went out there to the nursing home, the Rutherford County nursing home where he passed, to see if they knew where he was buried and all that kind of stuff. They wasn't sure if he was in. They have a cemetery out there. I've been out there and I've seen it. I didn't go to it because it's sort of grown up or whatever. They said he may have been buried there. They wasn't for sure and everything. But they said he really got adjusted to that life and everything. And that's when he started, doing the Bible verses, and one of them's in the paper. He said, the truth will set you free. So he was telling about his life, how he blew $3,000 worth on nothing, how he used to drink, how he pepper sprayed his wife one time she was bent over. He took a shotgun and put some pellets on her and stuff. He confessed all that stuff. I guess he was getting his life together or whatever and everything. And all of that I found in the newspaper. So you'll be surprised what you can find when you go and, like I said, you find some surprises and all that kind of stuff when you get in to do genealogy and stuff like that. On my own, I found things that I was surprised of, but it is what it is, okay? It is what it is, and nothing you can do about it. And like I said, we all tied together, whatever. And with that being said, before I ask for if there's some questions or whatever, Deborah, could you just come up a little bit and tell what you know and share your part? I don't want to bore you all talking about Apple John or whatever, but I mean, it was just intriguing to me that I started with Apple John, and I was able to find all this information where there was Carl, you everybody know where Carl Summers real estate? Well, he called me, somebody told him that, and I think it was something in the newspaper said about me doing research and stuff. Her next project is Apple John. And he called me. He said, I know Apple John, but you know what he told me? I'm not related to him because, he said, I understand you're researching Apple John. His name is spelled S-U-M-M-A-R-S, I think is what they're called, Summers' name is spelled. He said, but I'm not kidding to him, but I know about him. I used to live out there off of Spring Street or something when I was a child. And he said he would walk down the street with those canes. He just hit him up against the sidewalk. He said, I was really scared of him at first till I found out that he was homeless. And they became friends. He would talk to him and all that kind of stuff. But the only thing, he really got mad at people when they called him Apple John, because he wanted that out of his life. But he never outlived that, Apple John. So I was just intrigued to see what you can start off with and what you can find out if you have the patience to research and all of that. So like I said, I met Deborah. I'm an artist, like he said, I paint and stuff or whatever, and I had this art exhibit at Patterson Center, and I had his picture and I had his book, and that's when she said, that is my cousin, and everything, or whatever. And some lady bought that painting. It was a 24 by 36. I sort of felt sad after I sold it because he had been with me for a while. And the only thing, when my granddaughter, she would stay with me, she had me to cover it up because she said he was staring at her. Those eyes in that painting. She said, you're going to have to cover that up because that right there is scaring me. He's looking at me, whatever. And everything. But she bought that. I was set up at Scales School for Black History Month. It was either Career Day. I was set up there. And she said, that picture is saying something to me. She said, I want to buy that. And she took my card, and I said, oh, that's all of that. Well, 2 weeks later, her husband called and said she was graduating from Middle Tennessee State University. She had talked about that picture you had, and I want to buy it and give it to her as a graduation gift. And but like I said, I miss it. I did a little sketching with him with the sticks, and I have a feeling I'm going to paint another picture of Apple John. And I put the apples there in the picture there. I put the apples there in the basket because people talked about him and stuff like that, and even got James jumped on the bandwagon. Tonight, he called me, he said, Mary, we're going to have hot apple cider. We're going to have some apples. We got some apple Christmas over there. They got everything that's dealing with apple and everything. So I told him that was a great idea. I mean, I never thought of that. So I think Carol may have put him on that, and they just went with it, and everything is apple tonight. That's why I said if y'all hear some noises, you know. Okay, yes. I'm going to let you come up. And the next only thing I got on there is the people that I went in and I talked to and got information from. And I was so delighted that these people share this information with me about Apple John. Okay, but Debbie, if you want to do a little talking, I really appreciate it.
Well, this is not Apple John, but this is Apple John's father, Reuben Christian Harrell, and his nickname was Greenback. And this is a little something that my uncle wrote about 50 years ago when he was doing some research. And he says, having once been denied credit at a store when a young man, Reuben, decided never again to charge anything, but rather to pay cash at the time of the purchase. Because of his extraordinary thrifting, his astuteness as a trader, and his willingness to work hard, he had no trouble keeping the decision that he had made. His bank was an old pair of overalls with a knot tied in one of the legs. And when he got money, he'd throw it in there. And then every once in a while, he'd take that to the bank, but he never deposited anything. He never, he didn't need a bank. All right, but he exchanged the coins into big bills, and when he accumulated enough, he'd go and buy a farm and pay cash for it. And his purse was his boots. So he'd, pull that money out of his boot, and here you go. So he was known as Greenback Rube. He continued in this fashion until he had purchased a large number of farms between Bradeville and Murfreesboro. His name appears many times in the indexes to the deed records. Reuben Harrell had 7 children for whom he provided educational opportunities which he never had.
Okay. So that's it. And now we...
Thank you.
Oh, you want to hold on? And now, let me ask you this. Is this the one, not right here?
Also, you need to tell them about your book.
Oh, yeah, I do have a book where I did the research, and they're $20.
There's not enough for every one of you to have one, so don't fight over it. We've already sold a couple, and I'm going to buy one too, and she signed them all, and this is only $20, so y'all should definitely do that tonight.
I'm Dr. E.C. Talbert, and I've shared this incident with the Historical Society before. I'm now 87 years old, and I lived over here on Spring Street. And, John frequently came up and down Spring. I saw him almost daily, and he was just a tramp. And I was scared to death of him when I saw him. And he was coming up the street one day, and I got me some rocks. And I threw some rocks and hit him. I don't think I hurt him because he had a lot of wraps on him. But it's the worst whipping I ever got. He came back and told my dad that I had thrown rocks at him, which I did. And Daddy took care of that. And I never forgot Apple John. He lived in a house up in about the 800 block, which would be about where you said on Loki and Spring, with Skinny Brown.
Okay, I knew it was a Mr. Brown. I didn't know
Skinny
it was
Brown was the postmaster in Murfreesboro at the time, and I never knew what the connection with John and Mr. Brown was. But he lived in that basement for several years. So I remember him well. I haven't forgotten him.
Please don't call her. Because she needs to be working for the sheriff's office. I tell you, she could break any of these cold case files I think we've got.
And I have solved 2 cases for people, and I've got paid for them. I mean, I wasn't expecting it. I just like doing it. I'll just leave it at that, so.
She does an excellent job in what she does, and she's a good researcher, and we really appreciate her coming out tonight and doing this. And we also appreciate the African American Heritage Group that's here tonight, and they've been
Now,
a part of us,
wave your hand.
co-hosting this.
Raise your
I think
hand,
for several cities back
Raise your hand.
And James, we appreciate the hospitality that Oakland has given us with all the apple treats we've had tonight. We've had a little bit of everything there. And I saw him go back in there and get another glass of something of apple cider. I hope he found the hard apple cider. He found back in there. But we're glad to have you here this evening.
A JJV television production.